Hey everyone, happy Wednesday and welcome to Transformative Listening. This is our Wednesday, 11 o'clock Pacific. I know it's 2 o'clock Eastern time. It's 1 o'clock here in Chicago. Um, this is Nest Health's kind of midday uh, workshop. And so the goal of today's workshop is to teach you guys and to kind of learn with each other how to take music and take listening to music and transition it from kind of a background activity, something you do while you're listening to, while you're working around the house or you're working out, and use it as a concrete skill that can help you feel more centered and feel more at peace. And so this is going to be taking skills from mindfulness and mindful-based practice, which we'll go over in just a second, and add it into a very concrete and distinct way of listening to music. So it's making music listening as an active task. But just a couple tech things to go over first. So this is on YouTube Live. A couple of our workshops are on Zoom. This one's on YouTube Live. What that means is that though you can't necessarily see the other people that are in this workshop, it's private, you can comment in the chat. So the chat's going to be active. I can see it as it's happening, and I will try and respond to you guys as much as I can. There is a little bit of lag, of delay between my kind of speaking into my mic and what you guys see on your end. It's just a little bit because I don't have the world's best internet connection, but we've been working on that. If at any point you have any questions, you have any ideas, you like something I said, you don't like something I said, please comment it in the chat. Feel free to introduce yourself and share with the other people that are in the chat. Here at Nest, we love community. And be sure, the chat will remain open and active once the live stream ends. So if you have any thoughts afterwards, just share with one another and, keep talking. And I'll be active in the chat as well. And the chat will kind of remain present until the next workshop happens next week or whenever it happens again. So now that we've kind of covered those technical aspects, we're going to dive right in, and we're going to start by thinking about the way most people, or at least I, used to listen to music, right? I would listen to music when I was working out, while I was cleaning the house, while I was getting ready to, hang out with friends, party with friends. It would really fill the space. It was background noise. And music is great for that, right? It's a powerful way to set the mood. You're hanging out with your friends and you put on some upbeat music. Somehow everyone becomes engaged. When people hear songs that they know, they kind of leap right into it, right? They become really, really engaged with what they're hearing. They'll sing along. It's a great way to kind of bring people together. And also when you're alone, right? If you wanna take a walk, if you have to ride the bus, listening to music is a great way to kind of fill that time. So you're not just kind of alone with no sound. It kind of brings an environment. It brings a collection of sounds together that can set a scene. But music doesn't necessarily have to be used that way. Typically it's used as an accessory to a certain energy in the room. It's used as something to add to. But what if it was the focal point? What if it was the center of what you were doing? I kind of like to imagine the image of when the record player first came out. People would huddle around the record player and just look at it turn and listen only to the music. We didn't have the same kind of accessibility that we have now to music, so it kind of had to be savored in a different way. And so we're going to take that kind of energy, that kind of history, and incorporate it into our practice today. And when I say practice, I'm not a yoga instructor. I'm very bad at yoga. I'm not a meditation coach. By practice, I just mean a skill that we're going to try and work on. So it could be running a lap, learning to do a push-up. This is just a new skill that we're going to pick up today together and work from there. So again, the practice that we're going to learn is a type of mindful listening. It's a way to take music, make it the focal point of our thought, and in that way kind of ground us back in the present moment. And grounding yourself in the present moment is a very strong way to eliminate anxiety. A lot of anxiety, studies have found, comes from an excess of thoughts. Your mind is racing, you're panicking, you're going from one thought to the next, you're moving very rapidly, and you're not kind of grounded in where you are, who you are and what is surrounding you. And that's how the practice of mindfulness started, right? As a therapeutic technique. Mindfulness started as a way to take the world around you and let that be your center of attention. So all the kind of distracting thoughts that might make you anxious, that kind of huddle around you, you're pushing them away out of space, and you are bringing yourself back into the focus. You're bringing yourself back into the present moment, into the smells, into the sounds. And especially for people that live in cities or urban environments, there's so many sounds around us constantly that this way of kind of grounding yourself is very, very helpful for bringing yourself down from a state of anxiety. So mindfulness has been defined traditionally as a mental state achieved by focusing one's awareness on the present moment. So it's taking everything that you might be thinking about that might be worrying you, recognizing that that is valid and that that is there, but then grounding yourself in the present moment, letting those things kind of roll on down the river of your thought and paying attention to what's around you, the sounds, the sights, the smells. And those senses are really key to grounding yourself, right? Think about what you're smelling, what you're hearing, what you're tasting. It's something that personally I don't do very often. We're constantly moving through the world. There are tons of different sounds, sights, and smells that appear to us, but sometimes we are so lost in thought that they don't really manifest. We don't really recognize them in that way. And that's a very, useful technique to have. Grounding yourself back into the present moment by recognizing what's around us. So a kind of traditional mindfulness practice, a skill almost that we can learn together, because I'm not especially good at it either, is just taking a moment when you feel anxious or even when you feel you just need to come back in to the present moment and think about 3 things that you smell, then think about 3 things that you hear, 3 things that you taste. And this is a tough one for me because, kind of really breaking down your taste buds. Can you still taste a little bit of your breakfast? Are you a little dehydrated? What are 3 things that you taste? And then finally, 3 things that you see. And once you kind of move through this, even if you're anxious, letting those anxious thoughts kind of move on, let them pass down the river, and just focusing on this checklist of things to recognize. That's kind of how I'm defining mindful practice in this setting. So what we're going to do right now is just a little exercise. I can't see you guys, so you really don't have to do it if you don't want to. You're going to watch me do it. Is just take a moment to kind of close your eyes and just be with your thoughts. So close your eyes and let the thoughts that are in your mind be there. Recognize them, kind of give them a little touch. Say, this is thinking, these are my thoughts. And then kind of shift into your mindfulness practice. So close your eyes and first think about 3 things that you can smell, 3 distinct things. And these can be as subtle as you want. If you think your apartment smells like nothing, see if maybe you can smell your bedroom from there. Or maybe you can smell what you made for breakfast. Or maybe you can smell, a thing of flowers sitting on your table. Really try and work on it. Once you've hit those things that you can smell, shift to sound. Try and identify 3 things that you can hear. And then once you're done with that, open your eyes up and pick out 3 distinct things that you can see. We're constantly seeing all around us, but try and pick out 3 distinct things that you can see right before your eyes. So right now, if everybody doesn't mind working with me, just close your eyes and just start with smell. So close your eyes and think of 3 things that you smell. I'll give you about 10, 20 seconds for that. All right, now we're going to shift to sound, right? Use your ears. If you have headphones in to listen to me, take them out. I'm not going to be saying anything interesting during this time. And just try and pick out 3 distinct things that you can hear. For example, I can hear someone in my kitchen grabbing some lettuce, it sounds like. Try and pick out 3 distinct things that you can hear in your environment. I'll give you about 10, 20 seconds for that. And now last but not least, open up your eyes and try and pick out 3 distinct things that you can see in front of you. So don't kind of move your head around the room. Exactly what you see in front of you, pick out 3 distinct things. So for me, I can see the thermostat that for my taste is set a little low, the owl that we have decorated right above it, and then my chandelier. So try and pick out 3 distinct things that you can see. And now that you've done that, try and take note of how you feel. This isn't some instant fix. You're anxious, you do this practice, suddenly you're not anxious anymore, but hopefully you might feel just a touch more grounded in the present moment, a bit more connected to your environment. And when we are more connected to our environment, that is a way for us to kind of be more at peace within the self, be more connected to who we are and less connected with kind of intrusive thoughts. So if you want to message it in the chat or personally, if you don't feel comfortable with that, just think about it to yourself. Take a few seconds and just think, how do I feel different after recognizing those 3 things? And I'll give about 10 seconds for that too, just to kind of really, we're working on this together, we're learning together. Try and take a moment to really internalize how that specific practice, just noting those 3 different things for each sense, or at each sense, might have felt for you. And so this is the exact same practice that we're going to take into listening to music, right? It's this kind of active practice, engaging with our senses, that we're going to apply to music listening. So mindfulness is great, but for some people, it can be a kind of overwhelming exercise when they're really anxious. They try and get in touch with the things they smell, the things they hear, the things they see, but just it's very overwhelming, their kind of intrusive thoughts. And like we talked about earlier, music, especially our favorite music, is very powerful for setting a mood. So kind of introducing the stimuli that's familiar, that's comforting, that's comfortable, can kind of make the transition into a mindfulness practice just a little bit easier. So this intense attention to detail that we just kind of brought up through our original mindfulness practice, we're going to apply that to listening to music. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to pay discrete attention to the structure of the music, right? I know sometimes when I'm listening to music, I don't think about the work that's actually going in, right? There's a band in a recording studio, there's a guy on drums, there's a guy on bass, there's a guy on guitar, or a girl for any of them, and there's someone singing, and you're kind of listening to the complete project, right? It's been processed, it's been produced, and it's been sent out. But originally there were those 4 individual elements that are constructing a song. And so what we're going to do with our mindfulness practice is the same way we paid attention to our 4 individual senses. We're going to try and unpack what we're listening to. We're going to try and take a song and deconstruct it into the elements that made the song together. So, deconstructing a song into, okay, so now I'm going to pay attention to what the drums are doing. Take a few seconds with that. Now I'm going to pay attention to what the guitar is doing. Take a few seconds with that. Now I'm going to pay attention to what the singer's saying. I'm going to try and peel out some lyrics from that. It's a really active way of listening that allows you to engage with what you're hearing, what's going in through your ears, what you're listening to. And so a recent study done at Harvard found that music listening released the same degree of dopamine release as meditation. And so what that means is by kind of engaging in this mindful practice, it's almost like we're meditating, but with more of a concrete focus, more of a pinpoint focus that we're working on together. And so this is an exercise that we're going to do as a group. I'm going to be doing it with you, and then we're going to talk about it. I'm going to play 3 different songs that are kind of 3 concrete examples, because no one listens to the same music, right? Someone might listen to opera, someone might love listening to rock, some people might love slow music, some people might love fast music. No one's taste is the same. It would be incredibly boring if everyone's taste was the same. So I've tried to pull out 3 good examples of songs that capture kind of a lot of different audiences. And I'm going to play this first one. And while I play it, first try and listen for the drums, right? Try and pick out that sound and sink into that sound exactly. So don't let your thoughts get in the way. If you find yourself distracted, you've disconnected from the music, don't punish yourself. Don't say, oh, I'm doing this wrong. Just lightly tap it and say, okay, that was thinking. Now I'm going to move back to the listening. Our brain is so active and constantly moving, we can't expect ourselves to kind of put reins on the horse and constantly ride it. We need to be patient with it, and if it goes in another direction, just be kind and direct it back to the main focus. So again, I'm going to play a song. First try and pick out the drums. Then if you can, after picking out the drums for a few seconds, move on to really listening to just the guitar, and then finally try and really listen to what the lead singer is singing. We're going to spend a little bit of time listening to this song. It's not a very long song, but we're going to listen to a majority of it. And I want you to really think about the way your body is responding to the music. So pick out those things and then internalize them. See how you feel and try and keep the focus on exactly what you're listening to. So just give me 1 second. I'm going to get that song playing. And feel free in the chat if you want to add things you like. If you want to comment that, feel free to. And we're going to be doing this with 3 different songs and talking about it. So if you feel like, oh, I didn't get it right, it didn't work, I didn't do it correctly, don't punish yourself. This is a thing we're learning. This is a thing I'm learning. And we're just trying to get into the rhythm of it together. So just give me 1 quick second. I will switch to the song. And then just let me know how you feel. Give it a listen.
I'm ready to begin. It is real. There's a feeling. Let's not make any sudden moves. You don't have to show me how, but I'm not ready to right now. There's a feeling. It is really. Let's not make any sudden moves. And if we don't leave today, there's no hurry anyway. I'm on my own here, safe at home here.
So we're going to stop it there. But I'm just going to take a few minutes to talk about what I listened to and what I picked up kind of doing my own mindful listening to the song, right? And then we can move on to the next one. I think this is a real interesting way of, is a good interesting first song to pick. It was a little cheeky from me as it is literally 1 p.m. where I am, and that song is It's 1 p.m. by Yola Tango. But the elements of the song that I think are so interesting is the kind of repetitive tat 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 of the drum, almost like little raindrops falling on a puddle. It's very soft, but the way they've edited it is they've turned it up really loud. And then we have two different kind of dancing guitars almost that are working together. We have one kind of traditional country steely 6 string, and then one more rocky guitar, and they're kind of intertwining within each other. And it's very interesting to take those distinct sounds and listen to them separate from each other, because I love the song, but taking elements of each and then seeing how they blend together is really important. In the same way that we took, the things that we're smelling in our home and the things that we're hearing and blended them together. Here we have our own distinct sounds that are coming together through the song. And then there's also kind of the two different vocals that we hear, right? We have the low kind of whisperly grumble of the lead singer that kind of, it's not meant to be the main part of the song, right? He's almost more of a percussion than the drums are because of how much louder he is. He is sinking into the background of the song, whereas the drums and the guitars are more of the focus. But then about halfway through, we have another lead singer who comes in to try and kind of merge everything together, right? And the lyrics from this singer, who's significantly louder, are not especially profound or, complex. In fact, they're just laws, right? So it's just a loud, soothing la, la, la. And I found it really nice for me to transition from the singing of the grumble into the loudness of the laws and kind of balancing between them. And personally, I know for me, there were a couple times where I got kind of lost in thought, right? I'm looking at a streaming interface, I'm looking at a chat, and for a second I kind of got disconnected from the song. But I didn't punish myself, I didn't scold myself for kind of stepping out of my practice for a second. I just reminded myself what I was doing and moved back in. And that's the best way to do it, right? Is just to take elements of what you're listening to, and if you step away, don't punish yourself, just let yourself move back in. So now we're going to try a completely different song, because I really want to let you guys know that this is something that can be practiced with anyone and any song. Not everyone loves soothing indie. Some people like hip hop, some people like drum and bass, and it is not the content of the song that makes this practice effective. It's the elements of our listening, and it's the mindful way that we are listening. And not every artist, not every band has those distinct elements that make up a band, right? Drums, guitar. So sometimes we have to be a little bit more, ethereal with it and break the songs down into our own chunks that we're listening for. So I'm going to play another song, and you guys let me know, what your experience is with it, what you notice. And we'll do another minute and a half of that as well.
Don't cry.
All right, you sing it, and I'll show you how my voice would have made it unbelievable damn good. Oh, okay, Joy.
To see you cry. I can't stand to see you cry. If tears stand to see you cry. I can't stand to see you cry, no, baby, now. Baby. I know baby. I can't stand to see you cry. I can't stand, baby.
So now we're just going to quickly chat about what we felt with that song, right? Totally different. That was See You Cry by Jay Dilla off of his kind of very acclaimed instrumental hip hop album, Donuts. And that song is not at all constructed by a traditional band setup, you know? It's just him in a studio and he's using predominantly samples. There's a lot of different layered samples, samples of people talking, samples of different R&B singers. There's a persistent drum beat, there's occasional scratching of records, but there's not any, consistent style or band construction. So the way we have to sink into it is different. For me, I kind of started, really sinking into the background of those voices, right? I see people bring it up in the chat. The voices were very soulful and powerful, so sinking directly into them and kind of riding that emotion, feeling very comfortable with that emotion, and hearing the voices and each individual one, because it's not like he had a singer in the studio. These are samples that he found from other songs and kind of layered on top of each other. So pulling out those elements and putting them together. And then I also, I see it in the chat as well, the bass, right? The bass takes the percussive element in this song. It's very thumping. It's very consistent. And you can kind of ride with it and sink into it. And I think, Jessica, you're bringing up a really interesting point in the chat, that it's not always, music that we listen to is not always essentially comfortable. But with this practice, we're pulling out a sense of being grounded in the music. So being grounded in that discomfort, kind of sitting with it, experiencing it, and then moving more as we kind of go through it. Less about, what we're necessarily feeling in the moment, but more about what we're pulling out of the song and how we're kind of immersing ourselves into the track. I think that's a really interesting point that you brought up. So for this last one, you're going to notice it's very upbeat compared to the last songs. It's very fast, and there are tons of different sounds that are coming with it. So this is a little bit of a challenge, but really try and isolate each of those sounds that are going to be playing through the song. Really try and pull them out, listen to them, and once you feel like you've got a good grasp, just let it go. The same way we're kind of doing with our thoughts. If we kind of drift away, find a sound, hold it, and then let it go and move on to the next one. Don't feel too tied to any one concept of the song. Just let there be a recognition and then move on.
Thoughts on vision. Blue, electric blue.
That's the color of my room where I will live.
Blue, pale blinds drawn all day.
sit right down.
Waiting for the gift of sound and vision.
And so that last one was David Bowie's Sound and Vision, which is a kind of very gradual, distinct song, right? Like the whole thing is built. And it starts with a lot of very interesting, complex sounds, right? That pressure release, almost like you're filling up a tire with air. And then a slow kind of gradual increase of drum tapping, and then a gradual guitar build, bass introduction, choral introduction with those female background singers, and then finally, only about halfway through the song, David Bowie comes in and starts singing. So there's a lot to kind of individually pick out and kind of sit with, which is what I think makes this song so effective and challenging for this exercise, right? What am I going to focus on? There's so many different stimuli to pick. How am I going to go and sink into just one and sit with it for a moment? You can feel free to feel distracted and jump over to the next one, but really just kind of sit with it and sink into it in that moment. It's really kind of challenging and niche. And I just want to remind you guys, Ethan, you just brought this up, that I'm loving the contributions to the chat, but you don't need to feel tied to it. The best part of this YouTube live format is that if you individually want to just sit, close your eyes, and be with the music, I can totally understand why you wouldn't just want to stare at me listening to music. You're more than welcome to do so. If you feel like you want to be more social and step into the chat, you can do that as well. This exercise is really for you, and this group is for you guys to do with what you want to do with. But yeah, thank you for your contributions. I think it's such a fascinating song. I didn't even notice everything in it until I had listened to it like 10 or so times. David Bowie recorded the song in his Berlin era, which was when he was living in Berlin and traveling around. And he made this song by actually taking a little tape recorder and traveling to different places around town and just doing field recordings, and then slowly building those layers into a certainly 70s kind of toe tapping song. So as we kind of wrap up now, because we've reached the end of our half hour, just want you guys to think about kind of what are the things that you feel you've gained skill-wise. You know, what are the elements you'll be able to take into the next time you listen to music? I think for me personally, something that's so concrete is peeling apart a song, right? Typically we kind of eat a song whole. We consume it, digest it, and we're moving on. Sometimes we don't even take the whole thing in. But when you kind of are mindful and deconstruct it piece by piece, you can kind of gain a lot more internal clarity, you know, internal grounding, and also a far more deeper understanding of what the song makers are really going for. So that's what I gained personally. I don't want to assign homework, but if it's interesting for you, I would try and listen to some of your favorite songs and see how you're able to do this practice. You know, this is not going to work with every song. Some songs you may think, you know, this doesn't work for me. It's too distracting, or it's not content heavy enough. And that's okay. There are some songs that are more effective with this exercise than others. But I'm going to be sending out a collaborative Spotify playlist. And what you can do is just click that link. You'll be brought into Spotify, and you can make a free account. Or if you have it already, you can go from there and add your songs to that playlist. I would love to be able to go through and listen with you guys to those songs, practice this same exercise, and move on from there, and really create a thorough list of songs that we think are really meditative, really grounding here at Nest. All right, thank you guys so much. Feel free to continue talking in the chat. I'll be in there as well. And if you feel like moving on with your day, I hope you have a great day. Thanks again.